Hello and welcome to A Day in the Life of Sonlight. Today I have with me Emmy and Amber. I'm Stephanie Rose. I am Sonlight's community manager. I'm going to let them each introduce themselves. I will say this, if you attend any of our any homeschool conventions across the country, you may have seen one of these ladies. And if you intend on attending any in the future, unfortunately not right now, but in the future, you might see them as well. So let's get started and let's have them tell you a little bit about themselves and their homeschool. Emmy, why don't you give us an introduction?
Yes, I'd love to. My name is Emmy Kim. I've been a Montessori teacher for 7 years, or I was a Montessori teacher for 7 years prior to homeschooling. And I've homeschooled for the last 11 years or so. And I have three girls, 18, 15, and 11. And as Stephanie said, I've been working in the booths at conventions, and I'm just excited to be here today to talk more about homeschooling.
Great, welcome. Hi, Amber.
Hi. My name is Amber Severance, and I was a high school teacher and coach for about 5 years before God gave me children, and I began homeschooling my oldest when she was going into pre-K. That was back in 2002. And so now she just graduated college this year. I have a daughter who's in college. I have a son who just graduated high school. I've got one who's going into 10th grade this coming year, and I have a little fifth grade girl, Julia, way at the end. So I've got 5 kids, and I've used Sonlight predominantly all the way through my homeschooling journey. I just began working for Sonlight at conventions this past year. So I'm really excited to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm excited that both of you are here to tell us a little bit more about what Sonlight looks like during your homeschool. A lot of people have this question: how do I use it? How does it fit my life? So let's get started and let's talk a little bit about how it looks. Emmy, why don't you talk about how your day looks now, maybe how your day looked before as your children grew. And yeah, give us a little insight on day in the life.
Yeah, for us, obviously our days would change over the years depending on what stuff was going on in our lives at that point in time. I'd say for the past 7 or 8 years, we have always had dance classes almost every night of the week, and those usually started around 4 or 5 o'clock. And so we would just basically aim to get all of our work done by 3. That was kind of our goal. Throughout the years, the last 11 years, it has varied, but generally speaking, we would just always kind of get up in the morning, have breakfast. The girls all kind of make their own breakfast because they're all good at cooking. And then we just roll right into our day. We would just go, start with our work and kind of plow through the reading and or whatever subjects, and take breaks whenever we wanted to. It was very flexible. There was really no timer involved, or not a lot of clock watching, but just a lot of trying to stay on track and checking the boxes as they finished stuff. And then of course, as they got older, those dance classes or club volleyball lessons or whatnot would continue, but the older girls in high school just got more independent with their work. And so at this point, now that I have a 15 and an 18-year-old, it really is just about them doing their work independently, me working a lot more with my younger one, and the day just continues kind of the way that it had before, but just with more independence for the older one. So
yeah, I would say my day was maybe almost the whole time I was homeschooling. I had at least 4. So I had my little caboose at the end, but for a long time I had 4 children while I was trying to school. So I would divide my day up into about 30-minute increments. So I was a little more structured, and not that my schedule became a hard and fast rule that was inflexible, but it just gave me a direction for my day. So I would have 30-minute increments, and within that, I would often have the older child, so say my 8-year-old would have a half hour with my 2-year-old. And while they were doing that half hour, that would give me a half hour to do math with someone at the table and have someone else doing worksheets. So that worked really, really well for me. A homeschool mom told me once that 30 minutes is all you can count on with your kids. So if they're playing nicely at the end of 30 minutes, stop it anyway. And if they're fighting, then that's awesome. 30 minutes is all it takes. Okay, so I would do my structure a little bit more like 30-minute increments, and truly at the beginning of every school year, just kind of pray through what they all had to do and try to work it out so that I could be with who I needed to be, direct someone else to their own activity. But having that, as they've gotten older, my structure can be more fluid, but generally we have about the same order throughout the day, you know, doing the subjects that maybe take a little more intensity brain-wise earlier. I'm like Emme in that we don't have, I know some homeschool families love to wake their kids up at 6 in the morning and bam, let's get to it. I've never done that. We've naturally pretty much started around 8. I think one other thing I do that I've really enjoyed, and I've recommended it to others, is that breakfast time and lunchtime are a time for me to read aloud. So I will do some history reading at that point or a read aloud for somebody. And that has been free time that, you know, if you're in traditional school, nothing happens during lunch but lunch, right? But at homeschool, that can change. So we can actually get really good work done when I have a captive audience eating. And I really love that. And the instructor guide too, I would say having that available to know, okay, this is what I have to get through. And we really do use that to check off boxes to make sure we're getting stuff done. Yeah. I see it as a friend.
I want to just show it here as we're talking about it. So this is K, but basically it tells you what to do every day. You check it off. It has the talking points, it has maps, it has timeline information, it has maybe vocabulary. It is a great tool to have. The other thing that I wanted to ask real quick is, I know that this changes through the years, but how long do you think school typically takes? This is kind of, you know, based off of what your day in the life might look like. And I know it changes, but, you know, what do you think?
I don't know. For me, I just feel like, you know, like you said, Stephanie, it varies. It depends on the subject. I mean, the level that you're working on. And of course, it's going to increase as they grow. But then again, I feel like the middle years kind of took the most time because they needed more help. And then even though the high school workload is greater for your students, it's less for the parent. So you know, it's kind of a, hard to put a number on the time, but generally I just feel like I would say on average, I probably in my mind factor in any time between 9 to 3 is our school time. And however that plays out for my kids, it'll vary, but that's kind of the time frame that we set aside for school. Of course, if they didn't finish something, then they do it in the evenings, or we finish it on the weekends. Sometimes if we know we're going to take like a family trip, you know, soon, then they will work ahead and they'll chunk their reading, or they will, you know, do a little extra math or science just so that they're not behind when we come back. There's times where we haven't finished our work within our 9-month, you know, estimated time frame. And so we would just carry that into the summer. We're really flexible about working in the summer just because it's so hot here in Texas anyway. So we don't really want to be outside. So, you know, I just feel like my kids don't mind, you know, getting some reading done in the summer or some extra work done at that point.
Yeah, and I would jump in on that, and I would say that when my kids were little, 2 to 3 hours max probably is what we would spend a day. Middle school years, same as Emme, I would say looking at a 4 to 5 hour spread, and same with high school. And I'm like Emme, either 8 to 2, 9 to 3. Yeah. And if I really, really, really try to get my core subjects done in the morning. So anything so aside from like foreign language or things like that stuff, maybe we can do that in the afternoon, but things like history and science and grammar and math, I really try, if I can, to get it done in the morning, because that's just the optimal time.
Yeah, I agree with Amber. I feel like the morning is the best time because that's when everybody's the most awake and the most attentive and has more energy, it seems, for the harder things. So we try to tackle those things in the mornings. And then, you know, the more independent things they can do later on as they go.
Yeah, and I would also say Sonlight, it's a really beautiful thing that they have 4-day instructor guides now, and not
Right.
just 5-day. Because for a lot of people who have a co-op they want to go to, or you have piano, or you have art lessons, whatever, to have the 4-day option is great. I've always done 5-day because I just can't stand the thought of not getting some of those books. But I
Me
think
too.
this year I'm actually going to do 4-day with my youngest, because I need that day to fit in some other stuff. So.
And the other thing about, since you mentioned the 4-day, the nice thing is that there have been years where we've done co-op 1 day a week. And so on those, you know, at that time, having a 4-day schedule is very helpful. Or if you have like a day where you just want to have, you know, for doctor's appointments or play dates, especially when the kids are young, I think that that's really helpful too. Yes.
Field trips, all of it. Yeah.
That's great. Why do you think Sonlight works? What draws you to it?
How about I go first on this one? There are probably a few things. Sonlight appealed to me right off the bat because its priorities matched up with mine for my family. I loved back in the day looking at the 25 reasons to, I think was it 25 reasons to not homeschool through Sonlight, and 10 to, or something like that. And they just resonated with me all along the way. The literature-based, the depth and breadth, helping my children have a global perspective as far as interest in other countries and mission work and all of that, and really exposing them to great literature. So first of all, our priorities as a family were the same. Second thing, my husband is probably like a lot of men, and money, it can be the bottom line. And so knowing that I invest in this 1 year, and truly when I look at other curriculums, the cost was just as much, if not more, than Sonlight. And it's way less, Sonlight is way less than private or anything. So having that first child, and we already had 2 or 3 kids at that point, knowing that I can use the bulk of that curriculum for multiple children along the way. And that truly has ended up being the case. For that first child, we spent maybe $500 to $700 a year. And after that, I spent about $150. And that's not just on Sonlight stuff, that can be on other things. But because Sonlight is not consumable, that really, really worked for my family. And so the money, the priorities, having multiple children, the fact that I could easily make that work. Okay, I say easily. It can be daunting to try to figure out how to combine children. But people advised me. I had people helping me along the way to give me advice about that. And it worked, and it was great. And my kids have lived to tell. So that's nice. So that, and the IG, okay, I know we've said it a few times and we really weren't told to talk about this, but I will say that IG saved my life. It did all the work for me. I thought as soon as I saw it and started getting into Sonlight, why do I need to reinvent the wheel? This has done the work for me. And so Sonlight, for all of those reasons, the financial, the priority, the doing the work, that I could concentrate on teaching and I could concentrate on my kids and not figuring out how to do it. And one more little plug. We bought the entire package with that first child because I could not fathom having to run to the library to find these books and hope that they weren't already checked out. And my husband said, okay, you're worth it. You're worth it. We're not gonna stress you out by doing that. And so I'm so grateful because at the end of the day, I had all the resources I needed. And then as multiple children came along, I could pick up some of the extra books that I needed along the way. So those are my big reasons.
I agree with everything Amber said. Everything she said, I would second. The only thing I might add is that I really, really love the great literature. I feel like I hated history, honestly, in high school because it was so boring to me, and the textbooks were so thick and just filled with facts to memorize, and I always just felt bogged down with all of that information. But one thing that I love about Sonlight is the way they present history. You can literally put somebody They'll take a character in historical fiction and put them in a time period or put them in somebody else's shoes within that context. And now all of a sudden, the Civil War comes to life on a personal level. And it's just much more relatable for my kids. I feel like even for me as a parent, reading these, historical events and figures in time has come back to life for me. I feel like I can connect much more with the stories and with the facts, and it's easier for me to remember everything as well as for my children.
Yes, I second that too. Yeah.
You covered a lot of good stuff, Amber, so I won't be redundant.
No,
okay, so let's say you have a parent in front of you who's considering Sonlight. And what advice would you give them to kick off their year, to help make the decision, whatever? What's the one, the pieces of advice that you hold most dear?
Should I start? Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
I would start first of all. I mean, there's a lot of things to say, but really probably the first thing that comes to mind is to give yourself lots and lots of grace, and to give your kids lots of grace, because especially when you're just starting out, you really don't know yet what's going to work best for you and your kids. You really don't know what's going to end up to be the best routine and the best schedule, or how much time something is going to take. And so to look at the schedule, the IG, and to feel like you have to check everything off and keep up with the IG might be a little bit much. And so when you're first starting out, just let yourself fall into the routine and the schedule first, I would say, that matches your family's needs and your circumstances in particular. And then from there, follow the schedule as much as you'd like. Giving yourself that time to build that foundation in your home, though, is so important. And to give yourself that freedom and that patience and grace, so that you can do trial and error with different things and try different venues or different methods, and then finally arrive at a place where you're kind of at a new normal. The second thing I might say is take advantage of the opportunity you have as a homeschooler to delve deeper into subjects. If you get into, let's say your child is reading about like To Kill a Mockingbird, and now you have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about racism and about the criminal justice system and whatnot. Take that time to read articles, to look at magazines, to find more information, to watch some really good movies. Really take that opportunity as a homeschooler to talk from a biblical perspective, and to pour into your children, a viewpoint that they can consider, that they can think about this from a lot of different viewpoints, I should say, and mainly kind of cover over that from a biblical perspective. I think that has been really important in our home, just being able to have lots and lots of great conversations. And lastly, I would say enjoy your time with your kids, because the days might go by slowly, but the years sure go by super fast. I'm sure, Amber, you can attest to that as well. Yeah. Stephanie, your kids are still really little, so yeah, you're in the thick of it. But really, the days do go by slowly, and the years just seem to fly by. It was just last night, my 18-year-old, who's my first high school graduate, was saying that she feels like it was just yesterday when she was 10. And here she is going to college, and I feel like that too. I feel like it was just yesterday when she was a wee little thing, and now she's, off to college. So just savor the time that you have with your kids and enjoy every moment you have to snuggle with them, because it won't be forever. So.
Yeah. And that's really hard to remember when you're the parent of a young one. It's because it's so in your face and it's so overwhelming sometimes. So just maybe on a practical level, Sonlight, I am a box checker, and I like to follow that schedule. I have friends who don't love that. They feel confined by it. But I would say this: if you're like me and tend to be a little I don't know, overzealous, remember that the IG is your friend, not your master. And that was really freeing for me. I remember one year in particular, I think my daughter was going into 5th grade, and the curriculum that year, there were like 4 books we were supposed to read. That particular curriculum has been adjusted. I mean, that particular year has been adjusted now. It's not quite so overwhelming, but at the time I was like in tears. I don't know how I'm ever going to get through all this. And I have all those other people. And an advisor said to me, just don't read that book. Whichever book it was, I was like, that's going to put me over. Don't read that book. And I was like, oh, I don't have to read that book. Oh, I'm allowed to not read. Okay. So yes. So the IG and everything that Sonlight gives to you, they give you more than you necessarily have to do. Yeah. But it's your friend. Don't let it be your master and Lord. It's your friend and a help. And when it stops being a help, make some changes. Let it be a help, not a master. And then, I feel like a lot of young homeschool parents are so concerned about that they're not going to teach some fact or some, right? It's a lot. We have a hard time when you're new to homeschooling. It's hard to make the switch from a traditional classroom look. And I guess one of the things I would just say is enjoy the fact that, like Emme said, you're reading these great books. History comes to life. You don't have to test the same way, especially in elementary school, because you're teaching and they're learning and enjoying, and it's no longer about memorizing stuff for tests. It's about learning. It's about learning, what is education? It's learning. And I have friends and will say, oh, so what'd you learn in school today? And they're like, oh, I got a B on my test. Oh, okay, well, what'd you learn? I got a B on my test. Okay, that's great. All right, so that's one thing I love at home, and that you're learning. It's not about a test. It's not about your kids will get the knowledge. They'll get it. And you do need to have a schedule. You do need to make sure you're covering stuff, which is what is so helpful about some structure. But at the end of the day, it's this time you're spending with them. You're dialoguing with them. You're teaching them by example a lot of things, and it just can be beautiful. So like Emme said, relax, enjoy. Some moms relax a little too much and never get through anything. So we also want to keep, giving ourselves little nudges toward making sure we're doing what we need to do. But yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing your day in the life of Sonlight. I appreciate it, and I'm so grateful that you were able to join me today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.